Welcome back to the Valicites podcast, where we dive into conversations with the financial leaders, CFOs, FP&A innovators, and finance technologists shaping the future of strategic finance. I'm your host, Albert Ramos. Today's guest is someone who's leading the charge at the intersection of finance, AI, and my favorite, leadership development. Anna Tiomina is the founder of Blend to Balance, an AI advisory and training firm helping finance teams and professional service organizations implement AI securely, strategically, and with confidence. Anna brings over 15 years of real-world CFO experience and hands-on approach to AI, not just as an advisor, but as an operator who actively used AI in her own finance leadership roles across companies like Softtech and Sandoz. At Blend to Balance, Anna helps finance teams design AI strategies that work in practice, not just in theory. She's built human-centered AI governance for these organizations, and she implements practical automations that save hours. Not just to sound impressive, she gets it done and executes. Through her popular newsletter, my favorite, Balance AI Insights, you have to check it out. Anna shares weekly tools, playbooks, and strategies for becoming an AI-powered modern finance leader. Today, in this conversation, we're diving into how finance leaders can adopt AI smartly and sustainably, what real AI readiness looks like, the common pitfalls finance teams face, and why becoming an AI literate modern finance leader is now, I love this, non-negotiable. So let's jump right in, Anna. Welcome to the Valicites podcast.
Oh, thank you for having me. And that was a great introduction. Thank you for that.
Absolutely my pleasure. And I could have gone longer, by the way. I've gotten a chance to meet you and chat with you, and you're such a gem. And it's always a pleasure to see you and find out what you're up to and try to get into your brain. I love your newsletter. I've told you this 1,000 times. It is
Yep.
so good. And it truly, I was at a recent event called the World Finance Forum. We got a chance to see each other. And I
Mhm.
let the whole crowd know you've inspired me. I've never told you this. You've inspired me when it comes to AI and finance to keep going. Sometimes I think people think we're a little crazy. And every time I get a chance to talk to you, chat with you, even message you in the short amount of times that we've done, I'm like, you really inspire me to just keep going and keep digging. So I really appreciate you for that.
Thank you. Thank you.
My pleasure. Well, let's jump right in. I know a lot of people are excited to hear what you have to say. So, what inspired you to leave the CFO seat and launch Blend to Balance?
Okay. So that was not my decision, but this is the best thing that happened to me,
I love
honestly.
it.
I was a full time CFO. I was living the life of, I don't know, 50-hour weeks
Mm,
with little to no time to look around and see what's going on and to learn new technology. That was impossible. I was working in a tech company, so there was a lot of tech around me. And I asked boss, is a very technical guy, so he was pushing the leadership team to learn AI.
hmm
And you can, like, in the full time role, it's very very difficult to do that.
Right.
So when I left, I had some time to myself. I started the fractional CFO practice. Again, that was not a plan. I just had some network and they started to reach out to me and
Wow.
ask if I can help them with one project, another project. And so this is how it started. And then the first effort was maybe a month long. So I spent really a month focusing on learning what AI is, watching a lot of videos. A lot of
hmm
this stuff is free, but I also did some paid courses. And by the end of this month, I kind of got the feeling that this is the really the future. And what I started to do, I started to apply what I learned to my fractional CFO activities. And this is like the only way you can move forward with that.
Right. No, it's
And
such a good lesson, right? I mean, even in some of your transitional phase, stepping in and learning. Where does that come from? That curiosity and the wanting to learn.
uh, I'm lazy. I'm lazy and I'm busy and I'm lazy. So maybe out of these two things. I'm
Hmm.
also a single mom, so I have to balance a lot of
Wow.
stuff in my
You're a
life.
warrior.
And I'm always looking for things that would improve my efficiency, save me time, and spare me from doing activities that I hate. And
Yeah.
everybody in their leadership role has these activities, like reconcile some spreadsheet, prepare a message, a summary, something to other stakeholders, stuff like that. So I like, probably like you do, you enjoy part of that, you don't enjoy another part of that. And in good situation, you delegate it if you have people to delegate it to. In bad situation, you just, roll up your sleeves and do it yourself. So I was honestly, I was just looking for ways to make my life easier, and I found them. So the great thing was that a lot of things that I tried worked. And I started to talk about it in the CFO communities, and they asked me to teach them how I was doing that. So this is how my consulting business, AI consulting business, grew up very, very
Wow.
naturally.
It's
So I
amazing.
started to do webinars. I'm doing training
You're
to
everywhere.
the finance teams. Yeah. And I
Love it.
found my passion in that. So I think this is not fair that finance professionals have less access to AI
Hmm.
compared to other functions. And there are reasons why this is happening, but also some of these reasons are purely misconceptions. So
Right.
I'm trying
Well,
to create
we're gonna get
experience.
into that. Yeah, we're gonna get into that, and I could totally relate. But I do want to pause and just say you're such a warrior. You're so busy. You brought up your kiddos, and I see you everywhere, and I love it.
Okay.
And wanted to say thank you for yes, you're learning it yourself, and yes, you're creating your own efficiencies. But just so we can acknowledge, you truly do help a ton of us out there. And as you mentioned, finance professionals, you're paving a path. I don't know if you see this, but you truly are an inspiration. You're paving this path for many of us. Working mothers, those that are in the corporate arena, or those that are looking to get out of the corporate arena, or those that are looking to make or are currently in a transition, whether they
Mm.
chose that or not. So thank you for that. You
I'm
talk,
really happy to hear that, by the way. Really,
keep
really.
going, keep going. I love it. You talk about practical AI for finance. So what does that actually mean, and why is practicality, right? The execution, not just theory. Why is that so important right now to the modern finance leader?
Yeah. So the thing is that, so I did a lot of education, right? And a lot of this education, and I'm currently enrolled in a University of Texas at Austin program called AI for Leaders.
Oh, wow.
And so that's an interesting program. And I also talked to other people who took the same course at MIT or at Stanford. So there are a lot of programs like that, but they
Excellent.
don't teach leaders how to like use AI in practice. So you would
Mm,
learn a lot about statistics, about how models work. How do you apply that in practice? That's very big question. And I
mhm,
met people who've graduated from MIT, from these programs from MIT, and they have no idea how to use ChatGPT, for example, right? So my focus here is on practicality, on the ability of my followers to start using AI tomorrow and to save them some time. So I have some tasks that now take me like 1 hour, and they used to take me 10 hours. And when you do that at scale, so I
so
work
true.
with several companies as a fractional CFO. And for example, in for startups, you do these investor reports, regular investor reports, right? And I had to do them all at the same time because the
Mm,
deadline is more or less at the same time every quarter. So I like when I started, I had to spend 10 hours, then 10 hours, then 10 hours, and now it's like 3 hours altogether, right? So is it good? Yes. Does it work? Yes. And I still keep my impact. So I never send out what AI gave to me,
mhm,
like the first iteration, right? So
mhm.
you still keep your
That's key.
expert add-ons. I always read what I get from AI, and it doesn't matter if it's my newsletter,
Hmm.
my, I don't know, like articles, whatever. I always read and I always add my perspective to that.
So good. And I've seen you on LinkedIn and many of the webinars that you do. And I know you actually partner a lot with Glenn Hopper too. And something that I've noticed about you too is all about the practicality, the execution, showing those that are following or those that are at your events. This is how you do it, not the theory, right? And maybe
Mm.
not even the how you need to build, but more so how you use, to your point, to save time. And I saw that in your newsletter. You said, if I remember correctly, you said your first AI automation and just AI in general doesn't need to impress. I love that. It just needs to save time. Can you share what you meant by that, like explaining that mindset shift?
Yeah, so because the most important thing is to start using it, and what pushes you to start using it is the efficiency that you gain from that, right? So I talk a lot to various CFOs, finance leaders, and they often come up with ideas that are hard to implement, like something like budgeting or
Hmm.
forecasting. You will not get it in the first stage of implementation. The easy way is to take some process that is manual, highly manual, that you know how to do. So don't do something that you don't know how good looks like, because AI will give you output and you will have no way to validate if it's good or not.
Hmm.
And like delegate it the same way as you would delegate it to a junior associate, for example,
Right.
right? And then do the same things that you would do with a human assistant. Check what you get from them, right? You never send out what you got from your junior assistant. Teach them, give them feedback, like this
Mm.
was good, this was not good, and this is how you improve them, and this is how they become more and more helpful to you. But the first thing that you would do with AI, it will never be a complicated process. It will never be something that would you would share with your network and they would say, wow. It is
Right.
most like often this is something very boring, super boring, some kind of expense reconciliation, right? Like, who loves doing that? But like,
I
take
love
this
you.
boring project and use AI on that and spend your other effort, like your free time that you got from that, spend
Hmm.
it on learning more or on like your soft skills, because that will
Right.
not
Oh,
replace your
I
soft
can't wait
skills.
to chat about that. It's funny you say this because I think there was a couple studies. Speaking of MIT, or it might have been Stanford or one of these, where they came out. It's like, look, the adoption rate is starting to grow, which is awesome. Companies and professionals are experimenting with AI. However, there's still this gap of, okay, now let's go really execute on it and use it in the market, like actually get it out into the public, your customer, your frontline team member. What's your advice to them for that are just in the experimenting? We're just going to experiment and play over
Mhm.
here, but not really use it for use cases, right? And I think that's what everyone's wondering, especially the CFO. It's like, okay, what's my true measurable ROI? I'm not seeing a lot of data out there telling me what I should expect, so I won't invest in the tech. What's your recommendation?
So there are different levels to that, but the first investment, it's not a huge investment. You just need a paid subscription to ChatGPT, Claude,
Hmm.
Gemini, whatever tech works for you. It is very important if you are working in a company. It is super important to have the company support and IT support, because I
Hmm.
hear a lot of CFOs who have like a personal ChatGPT account, and we talk about how they could leverage AI better in their work. And I'm saying it's wrong to use your personal account. Go to your company and ask them to give you a corporate account and manage accesses and get some policy around what you can do and what you can't do.
Hmm.
So free that opens a lot of doors. And this accessibility actually changes the approach from experimenting to really like making impact, right? So you cannot do that having your personal ChatGPT account.
And
You
what are
can
your thoughts
experiment
on that?
though, right? So the investment is really small. The effort sometimes is really big because you need
Right.
to kind of push it through a lot of people. And then if you do that, the ROI is very easy to measure. You just need to like write down how long it took you to do the task
Hmm.
before and
I love that.
after, and like come up with some kind of how much is the cost of your hour, maybe something like that. Sometimes the impact is not time saving, but less errors,
Hmm.
which is also super important in finance tasks, right? Like less
Right.
errors means less, like less
I
expenses
would say,
in
yeah,
many
leakage.
ways, less losses. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
losses and leakage.
I
Yeah.
mean, the
You
ROI
made me,
here is really, really easy to get. But if you think about doing something at scale, so not a ChatGPT corporate subscription, but something bigger like a custom AI project,
hmm
or getting some kind of a like SaaS service that is not like $20 a month, right?
right.
Then you really need to, and this SaaS product will probably just automate one area, like account payables, maybe account receivables, maybe like month closing. So here is when you need to do the real calculation because these tools are not cheap. The implementation sometimes takes several months to like up to 6 months. So this is a serious investment, and this
Yeah.
is where you need to start thinking about ROI and measuring stuff and like understanding what you want to do, right? So
Yeah. You made me think of something. I want to go back a little bit about not just relying on your personal account, right? Uh, Being an AI first, or maybe just going to your organization, whether that be your CEO or CIO. Can you walk me through that experience? Because I know there's a lot of
mhm.
people out there, including finance leaders, like, yes, okay, I want to do this. However, my
Yeah,
CIO or whoever, right, in the ELT team is just not a fan. They think there's no security, there's some security risk, leakage risk, ROI risk. And I remember you saying that, AI adoption typically is a people problem first, not a tech problem. And
that's very true.
yeah, do you mind walking us through that?
So what you touched here, it has two things, two main things. So first thing is how to get buy-in from your leadership team,
Hmm.
right? And there is no one size fits all answer. If you are a part of leadership team, you should by now know your ways to get their
Yeah.
buy-in. And this is not the first and not the last project that you are implementing as a finance leader, right? But what usually helps, so the reasons why they object are pretty much common. So first one would be security concerns, and then you
Hmm.
need to persuade them that security is an issue when you don't know how to handle that. And any AI solution can be implemented securely if you know how to do that, right? So,
Hmm.
like, hire an expert or push your IT team to learn more about that. But it shouldn't sound like there is no way to make it secure. It should sound like there is a way. We just need to find it and to make it secure. So that's one thing.
Right.
Another thing that they don't understand the benefits. And why don't they understand the benefits? Because they haven't seen AI in action.
Right.
And this is where you can invite someone like me to do a short training. And I do things that are like lunch and learns, a very short stuff. And I just try to, get a spark to get them feel that that's a good thing and
Hmm.
it's worth pursuing, right? And then it's just the issue of, I don't know, technicality. Putting up some kind of policy around that usually helps, just because when people don't know how to use AI and what is allowed, what's not allowed, there are like, again, two ways they go about it.
Hmm.
Some go really unreasonably reckless, and some stop everything and do just very, very basic stuff because they don't know if they can use it on. company data? Can they use it on company data, but they have to anonymize that?
Right.
So you need to talk to them about security aspects and explain what it means.
Well, let's talk about that, because when you go into organizations and partner up with organizations, I know this well as I've followed you and chatted with you, you speak a lot about AI governance. People typically pass over that, which I too highly recommend you don't. It's very important. Why do you think so many executives or even CFOs overcomplicate the AI governance? And I remember you mentioning, and I think you posted something about the minimum viable governance framework. What would you recommend there? What do you recommend? And I know it's custom per
It
organization,
is
but
it is
yeah,
very custom. So there are reasons why it is so difficult to handle. And the
mm,
reason is that the legislation around AI is changing very rapidly.
right.
This is a very new thing. So there is no standard that you
Hmm.
can just apply. So you really have to come up with something custom every time, which is, of course, a lot of effort. But in most of the cases, you don't really need to dig very deeply into that, right? It is harder if the company has operations in Europe. So European legislation around AI is tough.
Very strict.
Yeah.
Hmm.
In the US, in most of the states, like unless you are in California, in most of the states, you don't have a lot of like liability with
I
AI.
call it the wild wild west. We're in the wild
Well,
wild
it is.
west.
So, okay, it's legislation wise, it is easy right
Hmm.
now, but for the which makes it harder maybe for the company because you need to assess your internal documents, like what type of information you have. Do you have some IP that you need to protect? Are you a public company and you have to protect your financials, or nobody cares if your balance sheet gets to an AI model, right? Like
Right.
if you're a small company, who cares? So there are a lot of, so the biggest challenge with that is probably that it is very custom in every case. But I had an experience when, so one of the companies, I offered them to develop a policy and they said, no, it's like a 6-month project. So we'd better not even start with AI. So we sat together and we came up with like 3 bullet points,
Hmm.
like use your judgment, don't use any sensitive confidential information with AI, and um, and for the IT team to make regular audits on what's going on, because it like when you have a corporate account, your IT team can go and see what's going on there.
Right.
And as a first step, that worked, right? So they are not looking into building some kind of complex AI automations. They don't have that much of the information that would, keep their hands tight, but they have enough to start experimenting and to find the use cases that bring value right here, right now.
So
And
good.
in parallel, you can start working on this more advanced policy, include the legal team. When you include the legal team, things go
A lot
rough
smoother.
usually.
A lot
So,
smoother when they say, okay.
as always, my approach is always very practical and don't try to find bottlenecks where there are no bottlenecks. That's what I'm trying to do. It doesn't always work, but in many cases it works.
So good. I think this was very good, and I hope people go and rewind that one, because in many of my conversations, at least now at this time, what are we in May of 2025? I'm hearing, okay, I need to jump in. I know this is the future. I got to jump in. I need to adopt. Where they get stuck is, okay, where do I go? But what are the rules? And people just don't know, because they don't know this and what it can do and the impact it can have, both positive and negative, right? And I think the way
Yep.
you lay that out, including, you know what, we don't need to go through the gambit in a 6 month type of thing. Like, let's stick to 3 top rules that anyone in the organization can understand, commit to, and abide by within compliance. So that was really good. I'd love to come back to data. So in one of your recent newsletters, And I'm sure you can tell I love this
Mm.
newsletter. I read it. It's in my email. It's a flagged one. It notifies me, and in my LinkedIn too, which I like. But you talked about messy finance data and how that can kill some of these AI projects, right? So how should the modern finance leader think about data readiness before they automate or even use AI?
So, as you might know, there are several types of AI, right? So there is Gen AI,
Mhm.
where you don't really use a lot of data, which works with documents, with texts mostly. And here it doesn't really matter. You just need to make the clean input, even if it's small. Just check what you're feeding it, and you can have high expectation to get a valuable result. But one of the other types of AI is machine learning, right? So for
Mhm.
machine learning projects, and these projects include in finance environment things like predictive forecasting, um, deep analytics, optimizing various aspects of your operations, supply chain, pricing, right? So this
Mm.
involves
Well said.
analyzing a lot of data and building models based on this data, and then using these models to predict future outcomes. So if you have any of these use cases, having the data that is clean, reasonable, so you understand what is in this data, that you're not comparing apples to oranges,
Mm.
that you don't have, I don't know, like I've seen companies trying to analyze, let's say, revenue, and one part of revenue was including tax and another one was excluding. So you need to really make sure that your data sets are in the same format. So
Mhm.
there are some like data cleaning exercises that you need to go. If you don't, your model will be crap, the outputs will be crap. So like garbage in, garbage out. That's,
Spot on.
everybody heard that, right?
Yeah.
Again, this is not like valid for every AI project, but for the machine learning aspects of AI, this is super important. Um,
I
yeah.
love about what you do too, and it's the human in the loop, right? You're still offering your guidance recommendation. You're still scrubbing. Now we're saving a lot of time. You're getting to the output quicker, but you're still scrubbing it because I don't think yet. I don't think that AI is there yet where it's foolproof, right?
Mm,
A lot of these CEOs and owners that I hear from, or even CFOs, they enjoy hearing, hey, we still have human in the loop, because it's like, if it goes bad, who do
mm.
we blame? Are you going to blame the AI agent? Like what you there? I think there still needs to be that tripwire of a professional, an expert, right, to be there in the mix with the executive team.
Yeah, you're very right. Um, so if you do it for a long time, like me, so like the amount of mistakes that AI makes has become significantly lower.
Hmm.
But I have several processes that I repeat very regularly, and I'm doing the same things, and sometimes I would get a very wrong result, like very, very wrong. There are ways to kind of try to fix that. So you can prompt AI to double check what it's
Hmm.
given to you, and some like tips and tricks. But uh, and I'm like, finance people are conservative. Even when I had fully human processes, I always had this like four eyes principle, and like checking everything that goes out, right? And the cost of mistakes in finance is very high. So
Yeah.
I might be on the here on the like conservative side of the equation, but I also think that AI is not yet there to replace judgment, like human judgment. And
Right.
if you think about, I as a CFO, I was always responsible for approving exceptions, right?
Hmm.
So exceptions still remains a human judgment thing. and double checking that everything, like in critical stages of the process, I would never like fully delegate it to AI. There are people who don't agree with that. There are people, and there are like products, AI products that would say we can automate your full account payables process
Mm,
from receiving the invoice to sending the payment from the bank. And I would say, yes, thank you, but I would double check what I'm sending and to who I'm
absolutely.
sending it. Like at the moment you're pushing the button and the money goes out, I want to be there.
Yeah.
I don't want to delegate it.
You just made me think of something too, and I'm with you. I'm typically more conservative, risk averse, right? Especially when you know, like the example you just gave, money out. We're gonna make sure that's the correct amount of
Yes.
money out to the right person, because just one, you don't the leakage, right? But you also the headache of having to recover and do it the right way. It just
Well,
wastes
in many
time.
cases, that's just not possible. And I had cases in my previous CFO life when we just sent something to someone and it was the wrong account and we never got it back.
It's vanished.
So
Yeah, yeah. They went and spent it. It's gone.
it is expensive. Like, and sometimes, the mistake is very simple, like an additional zero.
Mhm.
And then the cost of this mistake is super high. Is it hard for AI to add this zero? No, not at all.
Yeah.
It doesn't understand the difference between like millions and thousands. It's the same thing, right? For AI. So
I'm curious about this piece. And speaking of differing views, right? There's a lot out there where there's a lot of people out there and influencers or what have you, even finance leaders are saying AI is going to replace, or AI is only, it's not going to replace, it's only going to augment. And I'm curious about your thoughts there. And even in this example, when you're talking about, accounts payable or even reconciliation or what have you, I think it's going to replace that task. Now, if that's just your job, your full job there, just to do that, yes, I think probably an opportunity for that role and that task to no longer exist. However, back to the tripwire, right? The human in the loop. Can we use your skills, communication skills, your EQ, your even supervisory, if you have it, supervisory skills to manage this AI workflow, this AI process? What are your thoughts there? Where do you land on the pendulum?
okay, that's not flat. So
Mm,
my perception is that manual jobs such as, I don't know, reconciliation, account payables, processing, they will largely go away. And
mhm.
pretty soon, like it's not the question of 5 years, it's probably the question of 2 years. Um,
Wow.
I not 100%,
Mhm.
but it will have a significant impact on the job market. Now, the more like management executive roles, I don't think they're gonna go away because a because of the messy data. So sometimes you just need to be a human to make sense of all
Mhm. Right.
crazy spreadsheets that you have. And sometimes it just the processes in the organizations are so crazy that you need to be an experienced leader to just navigate these processes, right? To get things done, to get the approvals that you need, to get people follow the rules that you maybe have in the company. So I don't think that AI will be able to do that as well. Um, there will be new roles for sure. Think about auditing AI
Mhm.
outputs. We will need people for that. Think about designing these new workflows and or teaching leaders how to build and manage these teams of AI agents and humans. So that is a very interesting thing that will start to happen and already starts in some areas. But I don't think that leadership roles will be replaced soon. There will be a lot of pressure on finance leaders to like make their job more efficient and to use more technology to, like, I don't know, for example, not to scale up your team when the organization scales up, right? So
Hmm.
not necessarily fire people, but do not hire additional people when your organization like doubles in size, right?
Right.
So these kind of things, they are already here. It's gonna be more, um, but it is complicated. I also think that in some of the areas, we will arrive to different standards in accounting, FP&A, and finance. For example,
Interesting. I've never thought about that.
yeah, like think about budgeting, for example, right?
Hmm.
So when I started long ago, the standard is a big budgeting cycle once a year, and then like every budgeting somewhere in the middle of the year.
Hmm. Hmm.
That was enough. We don't know, but that was the standard. And why that was the standard? Because this budgeting cycle took a lot of effort from everybody in
Right.
the org. So you had
All
to work
departments.
with the like sales team, with marketing team. Everybody would suggest their budgets. You as a finance leader would like push back. We don't have enough.
Right.
Let's prioritize. So there is a long conversation. So having it more often in the year would just like distract the whole organization, right? So this is why we didn't have that. Now, is this once a year's budgeting cycle enough? In the current crazy environment, definitely no. So if you start using AI and not go and ask the same question every month after your month end close, you get a more flexible budgeting, but you also don't distract the whole organization. So I think that a more frequent budgeting cycle will become a new standard.
Interesting.
And if you don't use AI for that, you will either be hated in your organization, or you will just not be able to do this job well.
I've
And
been
I
in
think
those.
there
I've been
are a
in
lot
those
of
budget
things in
meetings.
other aspects, like in other finance processes, that will change.
I'm laughing because I've been in those budgeting meetings and just they can be grueling. It really tests the organization culture and the team member experience.
Yeah, there is a lot of politics. Like on my
Yeah.
podcast with Glenn, I touched a little bit on that. So there is more politics and interpersonal relationship than like real, I don't know, planning and forecasting and like stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the bottom line here for me is that in the current very flexible environment, organizations need to become more flexible with how they budget and how they plan.
Hmm.
And unless you start using AI for that, the pressure on your FP&A function will be like super high,
Yeah.
right? So if you come to your FP&A team and you tell them like instead of once a year, we will now do quarterly budgets, and we will not grow the team and we will not get any tools to help you with that, good luck.
Yeah. Good luck. I'm out of
Let's
here.
yeah, yeah.
It's interesting because as I hear you talking about this in the private sector going through these changes, right, and the frequency that would increase, and again, hopefully we're using AI to do it and some automation. I'm also hearing this in the government sector, your local government, municipality. I was at a recent event and they were walking me through the budgeting cycle, and I was very surprised. And I don't know if it's because of the lack of bureaucracy. And I know there is
Mm.
some in the public sector and even the politics of it all, but the open-mindedness to use automation and I don't know, it just surprised me how much more chatter I hear in the government side of things versus the tension and kind of the get that away from me type of thing in the private sector. Have you heard that at all?
So I have zero interaction with government sector. My guess would be that this is very much, so this depends very much on the leader that you have in
Hmm.
the specific location and specific function. And I see the same in the private organizations, in commercial organizations, right? You can have two companies, same size, same industry, but
Right.
in one the leader is more, I don't know, modern, forward looking, you name it, and in another one you have a conservative guy who just doesn't want to even think about it. That's how it works currently. It's gonna change. I don't
Yeah.
know. Like, I have no comment on government sector.
It's a good point. You remind me of that book, Jim Collins, Good or Great, that level five leader, right? It's going to come down. They'll write about this in the future, and they'll give examples of the leaders that led some of these larger companies that were leaning into AI, this competitive advantage, and some that weren't, and the ramifications or even shrink of the business that they had to face because of it, because they didn't stay competitive. And typically, to your point, the point of the spear, right? The head of
Mhm.
the head of it all is very, very important. The executive leadership team or the CEO, et cetera. So that's good. I had another question. I'm just curious, and you spend so much time here as well. But why do you think finance adoption? Because I see it in education. I'm actually seeing a lot of AI in legal, surprisingly, right? And even obviously operational workflow, sales and marketing.
Mhm.
Marketing is really on top of this. Why do you think finance adoption of AI is still a little bit slower than other departments? Why do you think that is? And
Yeah,
what are some of the early adopters doing differently?
I actually have a slide in my lunch and learn presentation about it.
I love it.
And I have, so there are like 5 reasons why, right? So, first of all, finance is more subject to the security concerns,
Hmm.
right? So, therefore, we have more barriers when we want to adopt AI. Second, our systems and processes and data is almost always, but very often dirty. So
Mm,
before using AI, you need to take a step back and to clean your data and to prepare your data. And that can be a like 6 to 12 month project,
right.
right? Another thing is that finance teams are less educated because like you said, so marketing and sales, AI is all over these functions, and it is easier to implement AI in marketing and sales. This is not as critical, or let's say the cost of mistake is not as high. So
Yeah.
it is like you have
Mm,
a million different companies who would do, I don't know, like you name it, right? Email outreach, like look at LinkedIn, how many human comments do we get
my
on
goodness.
our posts? Like less than half, I would
I
say, and you
know.
can always spot them. But it like
Yeah,
AI is everywhere, right?
they regurgitate what you said. I'm like, oh, well, thank you. It's like I want the human response. Bots, leave me alone.
Yeah, yeah. But for finance teams, nobody is investing in teaching finance how to use AI. You would
Hmm.
start with marketing and sales, then maybe legal. Legal actually is below finance. So I have a like statistics on that
Hmm.
with the functions and the level of AI adoption. And legal is the last.
Hmm.
And finance, I think, is second from the last. And of course, at the top, you have customer relations,
Right.
sales, marketing, this kind of stuff.
Right. Right.
So this is, but the biggest thing, which I think is a like, which is something that really is the core reason why. So, were you ever involved into like finance automation project, ERP implementation, BI implementation?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of
So
course.
it is always about either formulas or algorithms, right? Like
Right.
every finance process, this is a rule based process.
Hmm.
Now, if you look into AI driven automation, it is very different from rule based. So, when you have a rule based process and it doesn't work, you go and you change the formula. So, you look for errors in the formula or you look for errors in the algorithm. If your AI based process doesn't work, you give your system feedback like, hey, there is a mistake, or you
Context.
give it more examples of
Hmm.
how good looks like, and you
Right.
tell it, I want the output to look like this not look like that. And then you cross your fingers and you hope that it will work.
Right.
And you don't trust it until until the last thing. And we go back to our previous conversation where we say you cannot trust it 100%, right?
Right.
So the mindset shift that finance leaders need to go through to be able to understand, manage, and like adopt these AI systems, this is really huge. So this
Yeah.
is where I see a lot of friction, and this is why a lot of projects actually fail because they get one thing wrong and they say it doesn't work and they drop it.
Oh, that's so good. And when you say AI literacy, it makes so much sense and it's so important because what you just described is in a basic, the way I'm saying it in a very, very basic form is the differentiation between automation, if this, then that, the trigger, the algorithm, right, the formula to this contextual, like people just don't understand the iteration piece of it around AI, but that's why it's so much more powerful, right? Oh, that was so good. That was so good. I'm gonna come back to that one myself because that was good. I appreciate you
Yeah,
laying that
I
out.
mean, so also think about the benefits. Like the rule-based automation will only do what you tell it to do.
Right.
And there are aspects in the finance processes where you only want rule-based automation. You want rule-based system to calculate taxes. You don't want AI there, right?
Hmm.
You want rule-based systems to process payroll, for example. So everywhere where you need algorithm-based, sorry, yeah, I lost you for a moment.
No
So
worries.
so everywhere where you need algorithm based or formula based calculation, don't use AI on that. You don't need
Hmm.
it, right? But also what's good about AI is that it learns from its mistakes and it self improves. So you don't need to go back and to change the algorithm if it doesn't work. If you have things right, it will learn from your future interactions, and at some point it will suggest the things that you wouldn't think of
Yeah.
suggesting. So there are two different ways of automation: the rule based and AI based. You need to know how to apply and when to apply each of them. But finance people have a lot of experience with rule based,
Hmm.
and switching to AI based, it's just mentally difficult.
What is going on here? I love
Yeah.
it. Well, you know this, and actually, you introduced me to a lot of new and upcoming AI startups and organizations that we're spending a lot of time on. We're going to improve the efficiencies on the front end of accounting, AR, AP invoicing,
Mhm.
reconciliation, month end close, and all of that. And over that time, I started to think about too, and over the last year and a half or so, I realized there is this gap. There was this void in the strategic finance side. Now, there's some tools out there that are really good with like cash flow forecasting or at least dashboarding it,
Mm,
right? And so I know we chatted about this recently, but I got together with an organization called Valisites, parent company, AI Dev Lab, and Adaptable. And what are your thoughts about the strategic finance space? And even, if you don't mind, and not to pitch anything, but
mhm.
more just to hear your feedback on where do you think the strategic finance side is going and just knowing about what Valisites is doing. What are your thoughts there? Because there's a lot of action here in the accounting.
Mm.
But I do think the strategic side, or at least the forecasting side, the P&L recommendations and insights is really going to start making a splash.
Hard to say.
Hmm.
Uh, the reason why I'm a little bit cautious here is that I worked with a lot of organizations, and in almost every of them, there is something specific about their forecasting
Hmm.
process, right? So in the projects, in the AI project that I've seen, and I've collaborated with a couple of companies who wanted to develop some kind of like AI powered budgeting, etc.
Right.
We came to the idea that you need to niche down. So you cannot build a cash flow forecast, at least not initially. So at least in the start, you cannot build a cash flow forecast for both, let's say, the service organization, the FMCG, the consumer goods, the I don't know, government contractor, because the logic is very different there,
Mm.
right? And you either need a lot of data to feed to AI so it
Right.
catches your exact logic. And in many cases, companies just don't have this history of 10 years. And like imagine a company that has the same thing going on for 10 years. That's unusual in
Hmm.
our world, right? Or you need to like teach AI on the examples of the similar companies in the same industry, for example.
Yes.
Then it can work. So you're right, there is a lot of companies and services that come up. When I talk to CFOs, the like forecasting is one of the things that they want most. This is a very painful process. So if you're able to do it like that, they will be like super happy.
Hmm.
The question is how, like, when, so think about that. So when you join a new organization, and I know you do the fractional CFO stuff
Hmm.
too, are you able to come up with a cash flow forecast in the first 10 days?
Mm.
Most probably not. Why? Because you need to dig into what's going on, why the account payables, why the account receivables are so small, big, you name it. So you need to understand what's going on in the company to be able to come up with a reasonable forecast. And there are a lot of nuances to that. At least when I do that, my first attempt is always a failure. And then you learn new things. And then, like, after a couple of weeks, maybe if you're lucky, after a month, you can more or less reasonably come up with a forecast. So, my point here is this is definitely a great direction. I think, like, before we see a solution that can work for everything and everyone, it's going to take some time. But the companies that start now, they are in a very good place because you can do it for like one industry, one like type of the company, and then expand it. And the technology evolves along with the company, right? So I do hope to see like the tool that would give me the forecast just like that.
Yeah.
I just don't think we are there yet, but I think you are on the very right path.
I can't
And
wait.
I'm
I'm gonna
looking
keep.
forward to, getting that resolved because this is a huge, huge pain.
Yeah, we're digging in, and I can't wait to show you more, both on
Yeah.
the what we call Comply IQ, which looks at the data, cleans the data, identifies the flags before you get into the Cash IQ of cash flow
Mhm.
forecasting and all of that. My favorite part of Alicites, and I want to get to the last two questions because I know you're super busy and we're pressed for time, is the recommendation and insights. And I always found that that's always the question. Great, we clean this up. My reporting's amazing. I know exactly what it looks like and what it's flagging. So what do I do next? Like, what actions do I take? I'm like, so we wanted to solve for that. So really excited to share more
Yeah, I'm
with
looking
you.
forward to seeing that. And I'm, like I said, I know a lot of companies who would be happy customers of
Yeah,
yours.
but we'll
Yeah.
keep going. We appreciate your support. Okay, so you're very forward looking. I mean, I always feel like you're, 5 years ahead. Let's narrow it down to the next 12 to 18 months. And for the CFO or modern finance leader that's listening who hasn't adopted or implemented any type of AI, what is your advice? What is happening here? What do you think? What's your prediction over the next 12 to 18 months? What does AI look like specifically in finance? And then for those that haven't implemented or even adopted yet, what's your advice to them?
Well, start today. Like, what can be the advice? Start today. If you haven't started yesterday, start today. If you haven't started today, start tomorrow.
Hmm.
The earlier you do, the better off you are. Um, Compared to like a year and a half ago when I started,
Hmm.
the technology improved significantly. So the learning path is a little bit maybe shorter right now. And I keep saying that the only sustainable way of learning AI is practicing AI, like
Hmm.
implementing it in at least something that you do and experimenting with that and finding the ways how it can help you specifically in your role. Um, there, the amount of companies that appear, disappear, get merged in
Hmm.
this space is really huge. But I expect this space to become a little bit more structured maybe in 12, 18 months. And I think now there are already the solutions that you can implement and be sure that they will be there in like 12, 24 months, right?
Right.
Because a year ago it was a very like guessing game,
Hmm.
right? So, and also if you have a really painful process, like if it's your forecasting, if it's your supply chain management, if it's your like price adjustment strategy, something like that, look into how AI can help you right here, right now, in parallel with like implementing some kind of a, available LLM and practicing in your daily tasks.
Love it.
Um, because I often get people, so I get people of two kinds who reach out to me. First kind is we don't know what AI is, we want to start, we don't know how.
Hmm.
And my advice to them, just start. This is how you start. Get access, start practicing. These are the type of tasks that you might experiment with and find something that works for you. And another type of people is we have such a painful process. We've been trying to fix it for years.
Hmm.
Do you think AI can help us now? And in this case, I would look for a product for a solution. And the chances of getting a good product that would actually help are much, much higher today than they were a year
Yeah.
ago. And it keeps developing. So I'm very excited with the speed of development. We get improvements every week, every month, and it's getting better.
It is
It's important. It's getting better. It's getting
exciting.
cheaper. It's getting more accessible. There are risks with that. Yes, there are things that we don't understand. Yes. And like I said to Steve, the head of CFO Academy, even if AI is dangerous and it is our enemy, it is better to be close to your enemy and understand what it's doing.
Hmm.
So if you are scary, suspicious, still try something.
Lean in. I love it. This was so good, outstanding. Anna, I really appreciate your time. For those that are listening and watching in, where can they find more about you? How can they connect with you?
So I have a website, landtobalance.com, easy, accessible. I am very active on LinkedIn. Connect with me, shoot me a message. I am very responsive. I like to talk to people and I don't like charge for the first conversation. And subscribe to my newsletter.
Yes.
I like to hear great feedback. It the feedback makes me keep going, right? It's sometimes you just want to drop something, and when you hear that people need it, kind of gives me more impulse. So, thank you, Albert, for your feedback.
Yes, we need it. I'm telling you, we need it.
Okay.
So, as you've told me, like, share, repost, and we'll continue to do that and keep feeding it to us because we need this is the way forward, and we need to know what you're seeing and how you're doing it, the practical, the things that we can execute on. So, I appreciate that. Excellent. Well, and for those that like Anna are serious about equipping your finance team with dynamic forecasting, as we were discussing, intelligent scenario planning, and decision automation. You can check my stuff out at valsites.com. It's a platform built for CFOs, controllers, and FP&A leaders. So excited to chat about that too. This has been the Valsites podcast. Again, I'm your host, Albert Ramos. Anna, thank you so much. Such a pleasure. And everybody, we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.